We're going live here on Facebook. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late. We were having some technical problems, but I wanted to get with everyone, and we'll make this quick. It's not going to be too detailed, but I just wanted to kind of go over some of the special rules stuff that we're dealing with right now. Recap some of the old rules. I mean, the traditional rules that we normally see and how they kind of affect things going forward. I've made sure to get as many specific answers from DVC that I can. There are going to be some open-ended things here that we can kind of make some assumptions, but they're not going to. There's no guarantee they're going to be accurate going forward as the policies grow and evolve. But as we progress, I'll go into those things. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to do is to discuss your traditional rules that we deal with. As many of you know, when it comes to DVC, you can book a trip out 11 months in advance, 7 months at a non-home resort. Your biggest factor is you need to make sure that if you decide to cancel a reservation, you need to make sure you do that at least 31 days in advance or more. On a normal basis, if you cancel between days 30 and 1, that's when we deal with holding. And we've talked about that a little bit in here. But holding accounts is essentially what Disney calls a parking space. Okay. It's where your points go to just sit there, and they must be used in the current use here. That's one thing that people forget is if on a normal basis, if you cancel inside 31 days, your points are stuck in the use here that the original trip occurred. You can't bank anything. They're not moving. The other factor with holding accounts is you can only book those trips 60 days in advance of check-in. So you don't get your full 7 or 11 months like you normally would. You only get 60 days. So holding can be a tricky thing, and so that's one thing I want to point out that Disney dropped immediately. And we'll get into that, but that's one thing we normally deal with. The next thing that we normally deal with banking is you have your banking deadlines. Banking deadlines are based off of your use year. So we've got all these use years listed out and kind of how they play in. Each specific use year has a banking deadline. You have to meet that banking deadline is about essentially 8 months after your use year starts. And so normally you have to make sure you bank your points manually before that date. If you have no plans to use them in the existing use year, you can go bank them, push them forward 1 year. So those are kind of the traditional things. A couple other things I'd like to highlight that we're going to kind of get into a little bit more is first off, traveling late in your use year. Like I just said, right now your banking deadline's 8 months into your use year. If you're traveling in the final 4 months of your use year, you're putting yourself at risk, because if you do have to cancel on a normal basis, you can't bank those points. It's past the deadline and they're stuck. So it's very, very important to do. So that's kind of the general rules. Now we're going to dive into some of the specific COVID stuff and what's going on right now. Some of the unique things that we're having to deal with, and this has been an evolving thing as we've seen from right after they started closures. They've made some changes and moved some of this stuff around. But I'm going to go off of the existing rules and the existing answers I've got as best I can. So the first thing I wanted to dive into was the fact that they are making some exceptions to things and some unique things. So the first one that it was obvious right out the gate that they were willing to work with people was they dropped the holding account issue, because they realized that people were going to be traveling. There's things were going to be canceled like last minute potentially. I mean, days before it actually happened. And so they wanted to make sure that people didn't get stuck with those holding accounts. So they've suspended that process altogether. What they're doing from here on out right now, I want to make sure we differentiate these two things. You got the cash reservation side of the system where people are booking normal hotel rooms, normal packages. They're canceling about a month out ahead of time. DVC is specifically canceling 1 week out. So those of you that have mid-May trips are the ones that have had things canceled up till now, and anything prior to that. But those of you that have, later May, June, whatever it may be, they're still sitting there. And the reason I think DVC is doing that, for one, it's a lot of work for them to manually go in and change all this stuff. So it gives them a little more time to get things done. But the other thing is I think that they have a very good chance that DVC may open before a lot of other stuff does. It's very possible that DVC opens some of their resorts before even the cash resorts open potentially. So I think that they're giving themselves a little bit closer in window to make sure that they're not canceling trips a month out that actually could have possibly happened later. You don't need to cancel anything if you don't want to. If you have a trip that's coming up that's kind of in this little window, that may get canceled on its own, you don't have to do anything. You can sit and let DVC cancel it. When they do, they will manually apply all the special exceptions we're going to dive into here in a minute. You don't have to worry about doing anything. The only reason you would need to cancel is if you saw maybe you saw another few nights down the road that you'd rather book and you wanted to modify it and move it to that reservation, to those dates. Then you'd want to go in and cancel or modify yourself. Otherwise, you can just let it roll. Um, One thing that they've been doing kind of from the beginning is borrowing from borrow points. They're unborrowing them, which is a very handy thing to have. And I specifically spoke with DVC today, and that policy is out into the future for good right now. They haven't made any decisions on taking that away. You could cancel a reservation in June, and they would unborrow points. You could cancel a reservation for next March, April, whatever. So any reservation that is canceled at the current moment in time, they will unborrow points. Other special exceptions, as we're kind of diving into. So outside of the unborrowing part, anybody who had points from an April or June use year, that was booked into a vacation that was late in their use year. We were just talking about some of the benefits of traveling early. If you had one of those trips that had an April or June use year and you had points that were expiring very close to right after when your trip was supposed to occur, they're giving some special exceptions. The first one being 2018 points that were banked already previously. They can't bank those again. We've talked about that. That's something that they just can't legally get around. But what they've decided to do is take any 2018 banked points that were expiring and basically give you a 6-month extension to those points from when they were originally going to expire, by granting developer points and covering the cost in that sense. That's DVC's easiest way to handle it. One thing that it is 6 months from the expiration. So if you had an April use here, they were expiring March 31st, you've got 6 months from March 31st. If you had a June use here, they're expiring 5/31, so you'll have 6 months from 5/31 to get them rebooked. So if you're in that situation, you better get to work as soon as those points are available. I did talk to DVC. Anybody that were having to get a manual adjustment like that, you should see those like early June when they get that taken care of, and you're going to need to rebook those right away, to potentially not lose them, just because inventory is starting to get tighter. Let's see here. As far as 2019 points, so if you had 2019 points that were about to expire, they're granting those a 1-year extension, which is essentially all they're doing there is they're letting you bank them past the deadline is what they're letting you do, which has always been an option. And they granted that early on, but they're essentially just letting you bank past the deadline, giving you an extra year to play with them and get them booked and used. And then, as I said, the unborrowing, they'll send them back. And the nice part about with unborrowing, some of you are going to be in a situation coming forward with the new borrowing rules we're about to talk about. They implemented that 50% restriction, and to kind of go into that 50% restriction, any future reservation that was booked after that announcement, I think it was April 31st or whatever it was, any transaction that occurred with a new reservation that involved borrowed points, those you could only borrow 50%, and the system will let you borrow it. So if you've logged on since, you see that it'll flash the little 50% restriction rule on there. It'll let you process with more than 50%, but they'll cancel the reservation if you do. That only applies to new reservations. It does not apply to the reservations that were booked prior to that announcement that used borrowed points and you were over the 50%. It also does not affect if you had borrowed points from a reservation and you modify to a different one. You can keep the more than 50% borrowed. It only occurs as if you cancel it, they move them back, and then at that point, you're stuck with the 50% cap. So the nice part is with the unborrowing that they're doing for reservations that you cancel, if you get your points unborrowed, you may be able to kind of back some up in terms of that 50% borrowing rule in the future. It may help you kind of catch up a little bit. So that part is nice. We always talk about, timeshares are a unit of time. They're not cash transactions. And so you can always unborrow something and send it into the future because that time hasn't occurred. You just can't double bank because there would be no balancing of it in the past because that time's already come and gone. Let's see here. So make sure that if you are in a situation where you're starting to plan your future trips, know that 50% max per contract is the rule. So If you have two Polynesian contracts, one's at 100 and one's at 150, you can only borrow in 50 on the one and 75 on the other one, for a total of 125 borrowed. You cannot borrow any more. So just keep that in mind. It's and the reason DVC is essentially doing this, they've got to start protecting future inventory issues. They were very nice to do some of the stuff they've already done because, as like I've said in the past, they didn't legally have to do anything. This was some of the stuff we as members could have had to deal with and just handle. But luckily, DVC has the ability to accommodate, and so they're taking care of a lot of people. But they still have to start protecting the future. And so that's part of the reason they're not allowing so much borrowing in, is they need to start thinning the excess points that have been left in the system right now. They need to start buffering that out and pushing it out. And the easiest way is to not let people borrow in too much. So that's kind of the future situations in terms of borrowing and in terms of future inventory. Just to kind of recap, 2018 banked points are that were lost due to a canceled reservation. You've got an extra 6-month kind of special time extension that you get. If they were 2019 points, you get an extra year. Let's see here. If you have borrowed points, they're going back to the original use year unless you modify. If you modify a reservation and it stays within the same use year, then they'll just move over. But if you cancel a reservation with borrowed points, those are going back to their original use year, so you can use them in the future. So yeah, this is generally DVC's way of doing things. Right now, these can all change. I've talked to them on a regular basis, and they're just kind of playing it by ear right now. As soon as the parks open, we very well could see the rules go right back to what they're usually are. So I tell people, now is the time to start planning trips for the next 12, 18 months and try to get an idea what your point situation is, because you're going to make some decisions before DVC changes the rules again, once things kind of start settling back into normal, which it's speeding up. It's coming fast. We'll see if resorts open before parks. Sounds like that's very likely. Let's see how early that is. Is that in late May? Is that early June? Is it July? We still don't know, but it's definitely looking a lot earlier than the doomsday scenarios of 2021. Thankfully, that doesn't seem to be realistic, which is good. We're all going to get our chance to get back to Disney sooner rather than later. I would like to say I want to thank DVC Shop for helping sponsor this video. I wanted to get with everyone. I know we did a Facebook Live probably 2 months ago talking about the various stuff, and I wanted to get back and kind of update everyone. If you guys are in the market, if you guys are in the situation where you need to rent some points out, say you have a September use year and you're kind of in a weird spot and you got to cancel a trip, but you can't get an extension out of them or anything like that, get with DVC Shop. See if they can help you out. See if they can get you renting them. If you're in a situation where you're looking to buy a contract, prices have kind of stabilized, but they're a little bit lower than they were. So here's a great chance. We've got here's a couple of the hot contracts available that you guys can maybe take a peek at. But go get with Bee. And see what options there are out there. There's lots of good stuff. Use the promo code that you see below and that you saw just the screen before. Get $50 off, and go buy yourself some more points while the getting's a little bit cheaper. If you're in the market to rent, or you know anybody who's looking to go to Disney, tell them to go rent. Use the coupon code. Watch this video, because it'll save a little money and it'll allow them to get in touch with DVC Shop and use some of their services, because they've got a lot of things to offer. So I'm about to wrap this part up, and I'll let B come in here, and we're going to do some of the kind of Q&A stuff and see what kind of questions we got. I'm going to start kind of going through. I got to slide back up here and see what everybody's been saying. I haven't really been paying attention as the live questions go here. But I hope everybody kind of liked what they saw, and we're going to start to try to make this a little more often. Hey, B, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on?
Not a lot. I hope you're ready for some questions.
Now let's see what they hit us with.
Let's see here. Who's got a question? Let's see. We got a lot of hellos. I see all that. Let's see. Olivia says, if I have a December use year for 2018, what happens to those points? I was using those points for a trip that was supposed to be last week. Good question. Actually, I literally just got off the phone with DVC to double check this question out and make sure we were good to go. So far, right now, as far as 2018 points that have already been banked, they're only granting exceptions and special, rules to April and June use years. Those are the only two use years that have been affected, that they are granting special exceptions for. Seeing as you have a December use year, you have until 11:30 to use those points. So I don't really think an exception really would make a difference because it was pretty much the same thing. So you just need to make sure that if you had a trip that was canceled, get in and try to rebook it. I don't see them right now. As of right now, it doesn't look like they're going to be extending them anymore. So don't plan on them being there for like early 2021. I wouldn't. B, you have any thoughts on that?
I agree. I think once everything is back opened up, it may take a month or 2 months. I believe everything's going to go back to the rules that we've had in the past,
Yeah.
with banking and borrowing and back to our 100% borrowing.
Yeah, I think that they're going to, as soon as they can get the rules back to as close as possible, they will. I think you're going to get them back to the holding accounts will come back into play and all that type of stuff. They'll try to get back to that. And then you give them a few months to start sorting out how many points have been borrowed in and if they're able to start balancing the scale. I like to use the example of it's an old legal like scale. If you see on like where you put weight on one side and then it falls
Scales
the
of
other.
justice.
Yeah, exactly. That's all they're trying to do right now is just make sure that scale stays nice and level as best they can. So
And
as
we need
they,
to remember, guys, they didn't have to do any of this. I know a lot of people aren't happy with some of it. They didn't have to do anything. They could have just taken those points and says, too bad you lost them, they're gone.
Yep.
They are doing something to accommodate. They're doing more than some of the other timeshare companies. So we need to remember that and be thankful that we do have somebody that they are looking out for us.
Yep. And I think a lot of it comes back to, I mean, you got to think Florida law and some of these laws that require Disney to have a certain amount of points because that allows Disney to buffer some of this loss.
Right.
We're very lucky that they just opened Riviera and there's something like 70% undeclared inventory, which, I mean, that's millions and millions of points that they have available to sit there and kind of help people out and move things
Sure, Copper
around.
Creek too.
Yeah, they
And
still have a
Aulani.
few, and then Aulani still got something like
Yeah.
20% undeclared. So there's definitely some flexibility there, and thankfully there was. Yeah, if this would have happened, shoot, just a year ago before Riviera went for
It'd have been
declared for
missed.
sale, we wouldn't have had all those points to play with, which means that they would have had a little bit of Aulani, and then a tiny bit at Copper Creek, and then this the 2%. They wouldn't have had nearly as much flexibility. So we got a little lucky there. Julie, let's see. I have a September 2019 use here and was told that I had to use them by August 31st. We had an April 2020 trip. Okay, so normally your points would have been valid. Let's see here. September 2019. Yeah, they were good from 9/1 of 19 to August 31st of 20. You're going to be in that tough window. So I have a feeling that once we get a firm date of when things are about to open up and they're going to get things going, they may slip in August, September use years into that special exceptions window. Just because, I mean, you might end up only having a month to use your points type of thing if they end up canceling a trip on you. So it may be close, but you're just gonna have to wait and see. That could be tricky. The issue is you need a deposit into RCI by, let's see, August 31st minus 45 days. You're looking at the middle of July. So I would set a date of like probably July 12th or 13th that you just need to make a decision on RCI or nothing. Hopefully we'll have an answer by then and you'll know if you're going to get some extension help. But until then, you just kind of have to wait and see because that's kind of there's a few use years that are just kind of in limbo. But I would set maybe like, as I said, July 12th, July 13th as that kind of cutoff date that if you don't have an answer from DVC yet, then you got to start looking at RCI. Just because, and you could look at renting your points too if there's availability, and you could slip somebody in, get with DVC Shop and talk to them about those options as well, because that's important to have that backup. But the nice thing is you do have RCI as a backup as well too. I mean, it's not DVC, it's not the system, but at least you have something where you're not losing them altogether.
And it gives you an additional year. So basically a
Yep.
third year.
Yep.
To
And then you
use
can
the
actually,
points.
from what I've never actually done it, so I don't know
Me
exactly.
neither. I
But
never
suppose you
had
can,
any points.
right. But suppose you can pay an extra fee too to even get it another year on top of that
Yeah,
for 2 years
exactly.
into RCI. So you got some time, and we were just goofing around the other day just for fun, just because we knew we have a trip coming up, and I'm like, well, if we can't use it, what do we do for vacation this summer? And there's actually some decent RCI stuff in there that you can drive a couple hours and hang out and not have to worry about paying for a hotel room. So it's kind of nice. Let's see here. I'm going to make sure I'm covering everybody's points. Let's question next one. When does the 50% cap on borrowing end? I think we just mentioned that. We don't have an end date yet.
Right.
It's just going to have to wait and see. I hope it's not long. I hope it's not one of these things where it's a year or 2 years where we're stuck with the 50% cap. But in the end, DVC's got to manage future inventory. And if they feel that applying that cap and holding on to it for a while will help, then they may do that. I was going to go pull out the actual public offering statement. DVC has the ability to suspend banking and borrowing completely if they want and force you to stay within your use year that the points were originally allowed. At least they didn't go that far. That would not have been fun where you were stuck with just the points you got, because so many people buy DVC, as we know, with the intent to bank and borrow and use a few different years at a time. So hopefully it won't be long, Tess. I think within a couple months we'll have some more clarity on that, on whether it's going to stick around or not. So
Olivia, I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry, dear. Do you know when the parks open, will the pools be open at the Disney resorts? I would assume so, but the governor has not opened any of the public pools yet, although he has opened the hotels.
Yeah.
And the beaches, and they are working those beaches very, very strict for that 6-foot rule, from what I understand.
I don't see them just restricting pools altogether when the resorts finally open, because that's a huge amenity that you're just taking away
There's
from
going to be
resort guests.
some kind of restriction.
Yeah, they'll probably put some rules. I don't see them being just like, nope, pools are still closed.
Exactly.
But the question will be is, what those restrictions look like. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. We were talking about in our HOA, the neighborhood pool, and how when we can open up and what the rules are going to be there. So I'm sure those conversations are being had, but there's been no announcement as far as what's going to look like. Let's hope it's not too bad. Luckily, Disney pools are really big for the most part.
A lot of the water parks here are asking questions. They're
and
talking
you got
about
that
it.
too.
And not even just Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach, but Margaritaville's got a huge water park now, and so does Universal, and they can't be open yet either.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And if with Disney's phased openings, I'm interested to see how the water parks play into that. Is that going to be something? Because you're coming into their prime season, summer, and are they going to try to get those involved right away, or are they just going to say, scrap this, we're just not going to make money with them this year?
We're already hitting 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah, same here.
We need the schools.
Mary, let's see here. Are you planning on raising your point rental rates for future trips? That is a question for Bee and them. I will let them answer that one.
Actually, we have done some discounts and some specials. You can check our website. We have been running several different specials. We've run some $2 off. We've run some $16 points. The special that we're offering with this show promotion is $50 off a rental. So, no.
Nope, going the other way. We're going the other way. And I think, and this is not to badmouth any of the other rental agencies, but I think some of them have had some very big fiscal issues with this whole thing. And thankfully, Seth at DVC Shop and everybody there, they've done really good with the way they've processed things and done things. So you may be seeing some of those rental rates jump up because some of those rental companies are in a bad financial spot and they're trying to make up some ground. That just may be an assumption, but thankfully, Seth and Bee and everybody at DVC Shop have been doing really well. So I don't see that coming in as anything. Just get your rentals in and take the discount while you can. Let's see here. Everybody's saying hi to Bee.
Hey, Amanda. Amanda Canfield wants to know, is ROFR being slowed down? She says, I have a personal interest. Yes, she has a personal interest. She just put in a new contract. Not like she can use it. She's in Spain in the military. But anyway, the ROFR doesn't seem to be slowed down. What is slowing down is transferring of the points when it closes. They're not getting the points. There's one department that closes that contract and takes the points out. And then it's another department that takes those points and opens a new contract for the buyer and new dashboard and puts those points in. And it's slow. They're taking up to 4 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, just you got to think that a lot of them aren't working full hours, and
well, they're only working salaried people. So most of these people are hourly people.
Yeah.
It's the managers that don't work, that that are having to do the work right now
Yeah.
because they're the ones that are salaried. So it is slowing things down, but they are still buying back things at a regular rate. They're still not playing with the points a whole lot, with the price a whole lot. So none of that is really changing, but it is slowing down on the transfer.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yep.
Dolores had mentioned, so if I don't use my 2018 points by 11:30, I lose them. I take it obviously you've got a December use here. 2018 points would have normally been valid for 12/1 of 18 to 12 to 11/30/19. If you banked them, they're going 19 to 20. Yeah, I mean at this stage of the game, that's where it's at. They're not offering an extension for anybody except for the April and June use years, like we mentioned. As I said, August, September could get pulled into this just because we're compressing a little bit there.
Mhm.
But I really don't see them granting extensions to December use years or even October. Honestly, I just don't see it happening. So you need to make sure you get something booked and get out there, get them. And as I said, this is another great plug for DVC Shop. If you can't go, rent them out and get them. Let them make you some money so you can use them for another vacation or pay down some bills or whatever you want to do. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Any word
Uh,
on Vero or Hilton? I haven't heard anything other than they're just in line with the rest of the resorts. I don't think they're on anything different schedule as of now.
I don't
So,
know if they're going the state schedule or if they're going Disney schedule because they're in
yep,
different state, or Hilton is in a different state, and
yep.
Aulani also.
I know that their beaches are all open.
Yep.
Vero's are open. Hilton Heads are open from the state level and county level, but the resorts themselves are still in kind of limbo.
Right.
So if there's any resorts that were going to open first, those would be the two because they're
Right.
not tied to a park. People go there just to go to Vero and they just go to Hilton Head to go to Hilton Head. There's no other ties to them.
And they're
So
in the sun where the sun's killing all this.
yep. So if anything, they're the ones that could open early, but we don't know anything yet.
Yep.
Go ahead, B.
Carolyn Fortin says we're in an unfortunate situation where we didn't even have the opportunity. I just lost her. Road. I think she was talking about not using her points and can't use them until February 28th of 2021 and won't be able to. Carolyn, if you can't, I am very, 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 very sorry. If there's a lot of people in that situation. We will try to rent your points out for us if you would like to contact us and at least help you recoup some of your money so that you can possibly go somewhere else or what other trips or family issues that you need to take care of. But
Yeah,
rooms are scarce.
they are. They're very tight all the way through the end of the year.
Well, and February is a crazy month too. Always is.
Yep. Yep. I think it's one of those things that it's tough. We really want to get into this mindset of, oh, Disney's got to take care of everything, but there's only so much they can do. I mean,
You
there's only
can't
so
help
many.
that you have
There's
children
only
in school and can't go in
Yeah,
January
there's
and
only
March.
so many days in the year. There's only so many rooms they have built. I mean, there's limitations to everything, and it stinks. And it's one of those things that's trying to figure out, when you can reuse them. The whole for me, it was the borrowing thing that came into play. I was considering taking two trips next year, one for race
I
weekend
lost
with
you.
you. You lost me because I needed it for June. So it's one of those things that we're all kind of have to make some adjustments. But luckily, you have some resources. DVC Shop can help in terms of
Yeah.
maybe getting some
But you chose
financial
your
resources
family
there.
trip over a trip with me doing
I
race
did.
weekend.
I
Doing Princess Race.
my wife and kids will be happy I chose them. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Tell Courtney I love her too.
Let's see here. What other ones did we see? Trying to sort through some of these hellos and stuff like that. Can you rent points? Let's hear. Emily says, can you rent points that are set to expire if there are no or little resort availability? You can rent any point you have. You can. I mean,
If we can find a room.
if you can find a room. Keep in mind. So. And this was another avenue that I was going to mention to people as inventory gets compressed. For those of you that are eligible, you have the Disney collection. So if you're in a situation where you're like, I need to go by February of next year, but you can't find a DVC room, but you bought direct or you bought resale prior to the restrictions in 2011, you have the Disney collection. Yes, I know it's a normal hotel room. It's not a fancy DVC, one bedroom or anything like that, but you have that resource to dump points and use points that way. So, outside of renting, if you can't rent them, maybe look into that type of situation to where,
Joe, that would be a good question for DVC if they would allow us to take our points points that were expiring, or take some of our points for a year or 9 months or whatever, and use them in the regular resorts. That would be
And I had presented that. So I said, I mean, when this all started, I was trying to figure out in my math brain was trying to figure out what DVC could do. And so I was sitting there saying they have all these points, right, that they can buffer with their developer inventory. But the other thing that they can do is there's a lot of points tied up that can't get into the DVC Disney collection right now because of being resale. If they just loosen those rules for a year or 2 years,
but they
they
also
could
lose
really
cash on those rooms,
they do.
because
So
then they take cash out of their pocket to
yeah,
rent
so they've
them.
got to look at the numbers and see if it's plausible. But that was another potential avenue for them
Yeah.
to funnel people just to try to help buffer some of the loss.
They could
So
do it last minute, 30 days. If it's not rented at, not sold out cash, let us use it with our points.
yep, something like that. So hopefully they're watching, maybe, just a lot of this stuff we're saying they probably already thought about. But just maybe to reiterate that is an option for everyone. If you've bought direct or you have that, keep that in mind.
And remember, on rental, we don't have a different inventory than what you can see. It's the same points. It's the same
thing.
system.
Yep.
We do have some confirmed reservations that members have given us to rent out because they can't go and they didn't want to cancel and they're renting their reservation instead. But it's the same thing. But we have points. We have points to rent if we can find a room for the time you want to go, especially 8, 9 months from now. We have points. It's not just the confirmed reservations. We can help you.
Let's see here. Somebody else had mentioned, Amanda had asked B, do you anticipate resale prices to drop?
Amanda Hoff, I hate you right now. She's one of my friends, so it's okay. I don't know.
I'm in that same spot. If DVC is using ROFR to prop prices to a certain extent, that's going to hold things up.
Exactly.
The only reason I think you see them just fall is if all of a sudden people panic and there's a bunch of contracts listed and it's just a glut. It's just like the housing market, right? We talk about when people just start dumping houses, the prices fall. That'd be the only thing I could see happening.
And if it falls, DVC is going to take it back because they're going to want that additional inventory. They'll take back that contract at $50 and sell it at $186.
Yep.
Because somebody will buy it. There's people still trying to get a hold of them now while they're closed, even though we tell them, hey, they're closed. You can save a lot of money. Come in the resale market. They're not.
Yep.
I mean, it is what it is. But Amanda, I don't know, honey. It's a toss-up. It just depends. It depends on what the consumer does.
I think you got to watch that for you got to watch where the economy goes. And we were talking about this in our call the other day, how there's really only been one major time in instance where prices really tanked, and that was the recession in 08, 09. And so, do we have another one of those? Then maybe the prices do fall. But right now, I think there's a lot of optimism that there's going to be somewhat of a modestly quick recovery. I don't think it's going to be a V-shaped recovery, but I think we're going to be in a situation where things are going to start to come back. And so, and then a lot of the jobs that were lost were a lot of service jobs and such. So I'm sure there's a lot of well-paying jobs that still allow people to buy DVC. So I think that you're going to see prices probably hold unless the market the broader markets collapse on us. Let's see here. Jen, if Disney operates at a lower park capacity, if you had a hotel reservation, is there a chance that you cannot get into the park in the ticket reservation system similar to Shanghai?
Depends on how many people. Do they allow 100% reservations and 30% park? And how many of those 100% rooms fill up the park?
Yep. So we've talked about this in general. If you maxed out all the rooms on property, cash and DVC, you're looking at about 25 to 30% of what the parks can handle on a full capacity scale. All 4 parks, max them out. They've already said that Shanghai was an intentional 30% below, and that was below what even the authorities were and the government said they could do. So they're clearly starting really low. I have a feeling that they're not going to alienate any cash reservations. Now, I'll take this. This is a personal assumptions, thoughts. These are just my guesses. None of this is official. But I really do think that they're going to lump all on-site reservations into the same boat, and they're not going to give anybody an advantage there. I think that grouping is going to be the same. Now, do they limit a certain amount of rooms to try to keep that number lower? Very good chance. DVC, they'll probably fill it up as best they can because they kind of have to at this point. They need to fill rooms as much as they can. But the cash side, they can try to start limiting and keeping that down to keep the numbers down.
You think
But
so? Because they need that cash
they need
in.
the revenue. They need the revenue. But I think that they've got to look at it as they need that revenue, but they can't afford any more losses with DVC. I don't think that they can sit there and cover too much. So I think that they're going to probably try to fill those up as best they can. But in the end, I think that they're going to treat all on-site reservations the same. The question will be, what does it look like? We don't know if it's going to be a reservation system like Shanghai. Is it going to be one of those things that you have an on-site reservation, you automatically get a chance to get in? Oh, you have to have fast passes booked to get in. I mean, who knows? So, but I think that I think you're probably safe if you have a reservation. Parks are open. I think you're going to have a pretty good chance getting in the park. I
Okay.
don't see them saying, "Hey, welcome to Disney. You're in our bubble, but you can't enjoy it." I
Hey,
don't
Joe,
see
let
that
me
happening.
ask you this. Seth and I have disagreed on this. Are they going to open up the resorts and let the people in, or are they going to open it up to Florida residents and let them in to test out whatever system they've put in place before they start putting people in rooms?
You know, that's a tough one. So I know that the various like the Orange County Task Force has already said, hey, let's target Florida residents first. From both an economic standpoint, it's easier to get Florida residents to drive a few hours to come to the park versus somebody that's like me that's got to drive 15 or get on a flight. They also know that flights are going to be extremely limited initially on, so I mean, people flying in are going to have a hard time even getting there. I would not be surprised if they do kind of a not even a soft opening, but like a test opening, kind of like they did in Shanghai, where they bring in 10,000 locals and say, "Hey, give us
Yep.
your feedback and thoughts before they do anything, before they open anything else." And I wouldn't even call that even opening. That's more just like, "Hey, we're just making sure everything's working and all these
And
rides
see
that have been
how,
sitting for months are all
and to
operating
see
right."
how the new lines are going to
Right.
roll and
I
how
wouldn't
everything's going to go.
I
Test
wouldn't be
it out.
surprised. That would not surprise me at all. Although they probably could do that to a certain extent with just DVC if they wanted to. They could open up some DVC inventory for say June 1st to June 15th and allow all those people to come test it out too before they open up cash or allow cash in. I don't know. But
We're getting close because I have been told by a management at DVC that once they bring staff back, it's going to be 3 weeks minimum before they can open a park.
yeah, I believe that.
And that's not even the rooms.
We're
That's
getting
just the
close.
park.
Yeah,
Just,
we're getting
we're
close.
getting close to that
Yeah.
June 1st date.
Yep. For sure. And when I was looking back, I was like, I've been kind of calling for June 1, but I mean that didn't include parks. I mean parks were an anomaly that could happen. I mean they could drag out for a while. I think they can get the resorts open pretty quick. Restaurants they can get to their capacity limits that they need to do by shuffling tables and whatnot. But the parks are their own unique animal, and it'll be interesting to see.
I am going
Um,
to go to Disney Springs on May 20th and see what that looks like. There's no Disney stores open,
right.
only third-party stores and restaurants. But I'm going to go check it out, see what it looks like, see what security looks like, see what they're doing as far as cleaning, and see if I can get us an idea at least.
Absolutely.
Find a big wig walking around that I can talk to.
That's right. Yeah. See, you never know. Stephanie mentioned I'm wanting to buy direct into DVC, but I'm worried not getting any availability. Are there any rooms available? So here's the thing. I always tell people how you buy DVC does not change your ability to book your rooms in terms of the DVC system. Understand that. You can buy resale, you can buy direct. Your ability to book at your home resort's 11 months. And that doesn't change. And your ability to book at a non-home resort 7 months. That doesn't change. The only thing that changes in terms of if you buy Riviera resale, those kind of little quirky things. So I wouldn't look at it as a grand scheme of availability buying direct versus resale. You got to buy direct if there's certain perks that you absolutely have to have. If you'd rather save a bunch of money, talk to B. Right, B? She's the one. She'll save you a lot of money. I'm talking like
Hey,
40%.
I saved 3 people money today.
There you go. Um, let's see here. Do you see another MB there?
I saw something there about Magical Express and park transportation. Did I think it was going to change? If it was going to change, I don't know where it went, but it's gone. They're going to have to make something
Have to.
change because you can't have those buses packed and everybody standing up and everything else. There it is, Terry Bentley. It they got to do something. They're going to have to limit it somehow, which means. But also, if there's not as many people in the park, there's
Yeah.
not going to be as great a need for transportation.
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, a lot
I'll
of people
drive
that have
myself.
started with Disney in the last few years and they've seen Disney as busy it's been the last few years, they've never seen it light. Uh, I went to the parks after 9/11. I went to the parks after the '08 recession, and when you're looking at 20, 30% capacity, like they're not even close to what their numbers can hold. You get on a bus, and half the time you're the only person on the bus. So, and then
I
even
think
at
that's
park, and then even at park closed, they can make it work, and they can try to separate people out. So I think it's one of those things that, um, yes, they're going to have to make some adjustments, whether that be cleaning on a regular, more frequently and separating people out. Maybe no standing room. You have to be able to sit down. I don't know on a bus, but I think they're going to make some changes. With the Skyliner, B doesn't like the Skyliner, but maybe they do every other one, and so that allows them chance to clean as they go. And they kind of have cleaning stations as they work through it, stuff like
clean
that.
the buses at the end of the park when everybody gets off, and then they go back again.
Yeah.
They're
This
gonna have
the
to do
big
something.
one, the tough one's gonna be the monorail because that's crammed as it is and real tight. They're gonna
Yeah,
have to work on that one a lot. But they're gonna have to make some adjustments. I don't think they're gonna drop it. I had saw this crazy idea that maybe they just drop transportation for a while and you have to be able to drive yourself to the park. If you can't drive yourself, you can't go. I was like, oh, I don't know if that's gonna work. So there'll be some changes, but I think it'll all be flexible. We just
I think so
guess
too.
what? We all complained about. A lot of people complained about waiting for buses. Don't complain. Just understand that it's just gonna be part of the game.
Be happy you're
Um,
there.
yeah, you're at Disney. Be happy. Amy mentioned October use here, so May banking deadline. Scheduled trip for mid-July. Okay. Let's see your thoughts on canceling and banking versus holding on. So Aulani and Disneyland. Disneyland, I think you're done. I don't think there's a chance Disneyland opens before the end of the summer. It is just not happening. Aulani could, but the problem is Hawaii sounds like they're making it pretty strict in terms of travel coming in right
Yeah,
now. So I'm just going to give you a personal opinion. If I was in your shoes, I would cancel and bank. That's what I would do. And it sucks because that's a big trip you probably plan. It's probably like 9, 10 nights, fancy ocean views. I get it. Those are hard trips to replan. But in the end, I think that your DL portion is scrapped altogether. And then your Alani portion's a big toss up because of flights and getting there. So that's personally what I would do. But again, you got to make a decision for yourself.
I agree. I think so.
Let's see here. I jumped. Sorry.
I know. I lost a couple.
Let's see here.
Somebody
What is
wanted to
Disney
know
collection?
somebody wanted to know who the guy with the headphone is.
I'm
The
Joe.
headphones. This is Joe.
I normally wouldn't have these in, but we were having technical difficulties, so I had to use a different headset today. Luckily, we got on. We were a little worried there. Emily had asked, "What is the Disney collection? Is that just using DVC points on regular Disney hotel rooms?" Essentially, yes. The cruises are also in the Disney collection. Your points are expensive that way. I tell people back 20 years ago when I first joined, you could actually swap into the Disney collection, like and go to Port Orleans, and it really was pretty affordable. But that was because cash rates were affordable. As cash rates climb, so does the conversion cost for points that DVC has to accommodate. So they keep creeping up and creeping up. So that's where you get a value, a moderate room that costs twice as many points as a DVC studio. But in the end, is it better to do that and not lose your points? Maybe you have to. I would not recommend doing it on a regular basis, but when your hands are tied like this may be maybe a way to go. It's either that or you're looking at RCI. And I personally, for me, I'd much rather just use it in the Disney collection than RCI because at least I get to go to Disney. So that's just a personal opinion. But look into it. There's some handy ways to do it. It's a good chance to go check out some resorts that you normally wouldn't get to use. Port Orleans, Riverside, Port Orleans, French Quarter are a great resort. If I paid cash for rooms, that's where I would be.
And you get to go see Yeehaw Bob and have beignets.
That's right, beignets.
Usually
Yes,
beignets.
yes, and you're a short walk over to Old Key West to go to Olivia's, so not a bad deal either. Let's see here. Amy mentioned if our June trip doesn't get canceled. Oh, crud, what happened? If our June trip
I
doesn't
know.
get canceled, you got it, Ree. Go ahead, Ree. B,
I
I
don't know. I
lost it.
lost it. It was June trip doesn't get canceled. Something about May.
I'm not trying to find it. All these comments. As soon as I click
David,
on it,
did
it
you
pops
find
on.
it?
Emily mentioned there it is. Oh, there it is. Amy's there. If our June trip doesn't get canceled, we will drive ourselves to every park. There you go. There you go.
I don't
I
work.
I would do it. I joked on the page I don't know, a month ago that I got some really cheap flights on Spirit and everybody was giving me a hard time. I'm like, yeah, like literally 2 days later they canceled all flights for like up through like July 4th. So all y'all were right in that sense, but at least I didn't like get stranded anywhere. So we're stuck driving in June if we have to, if we end up going.
Oh, that's
Um,
wonderful with a brand new baby.
yeah, 15 hours each way.
Yeah.
Denise says, land and sea. I booked resort for sea days. If cruise goes, I will cancel sea days and keep before and after. Oh, perfect. There you go. Any more questions? I think Skylar's going to do great once everything
Yeah, the
opens back
cruises
up.
have not come back online, and last I heard, it's at least not before July 1st, and possibly after that from our
Well,
travel agent.
we all know there's certain places in life that are just prone to passing bugs around. Cruises are not a good place for that.
The Petri dish.
It's a petri dish, and the other places are gyms. That's why most MRSA infections come
Mhm.
from gyms, and so I think that's why you haven't seen gyms really reopen a lot of places either. And it sucks. I mean, I know there are a lot of you that just cruise, and you're stuck right now. So let's hope it comes back soon. Let's see here. Says I have an August use here. My May trip was canceled. So not only will I lose those points, I can only borrow 50% from next year. Yeah. So in
Yeah,
your situation, I have an August use here. Let's pray. Let's hope that you get lumped into that kind of. They maybe increase these exceptions from the April June use years to August, maybe September. I'm hopeful that's going to happen. I did ask them today, and they said they don't know for sure. And I think that's just because they're not sure exactly when things are going to reopen.
I think it's a day by
Um,
day.
it
They don't know
is.
what's going
It
on. The
is.
real.
So let's hope that you get lumped in there and you get a chance to get some of those points back. And yes, with the 50% borrowing and stuff, and uh, they've done a very good job in making things right. There are going to be some people that lose, and it sucks when you're one of the ones that loses. But there's no way they're going to be able to solve. I think we're at 500,000 members now, something like that, in terms of DVC or upwards of that.
Right.
There's going to be a few people that are going to get stuck, and it stinks, but this is the way it is. But let's hope they extend those exceptions for you, and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Any more questions? Does
Amy
Joe work?
Meeker,
Does
Amy
somebody
Meeker
ask me if I?
Taylor, maybe you answered this and I missed it, but the new 50% restrictions is per home resort, right? Each home is a contract. Each
It's per
each home is
contract.
a contract, and you could have multiple contracts at one home.
Exactly. So say you've got say you bought Beach Club back 20 years ago, and then you've added a couple 50 pointers since then. You bought 200, and then you added a couple 50 pointers. Well, it's per contract. So if you had a 200, you're stuck with 100 borrowing on that contract, and then you're stuck with another out of the 50. You can only borrow 25, and you can only borrow 25 on the next one. So it's per contract. The reason they're basing out per contracts, they can't base it by home resort. They're not going to base it by membership number necessarily. It's easier just to break it down per contract to keep the best track of it all.
So basically, your total overall points divided by half.
Yep, pretty much.
That's what you get.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Cheryl asked, "Does Joe work for Disney?" No, I don't work for Disney. I get that asked a lot, actually, but I
Yeah,
don't.
she said so.
I
So
never.
your comments are just your opinions. Yep.
These are just opinions. Yes, these are
What's the
a lot of
one?
a lot of these are just kind of speculation.
A lot
As
of them
far
are
as
also facts too, as far
oh
as
yeah,
the banking, the borrowing, and things of that nature. We're telling you just like it is. I mean, just
yep.
like we would tell our family.
So all these special rules that we talked about at the very beginning that I did on the educational part of this thing, you can go to the link and we'll pop that up here. There's a link that you can go to and it lists the exact rules that are out there. Those are all facts. That's just what it is. All this kind of some chit chat in the back is some thoughts on what could happen and what may not happen. But all that stuff specific to the banking and borrowing rules and the COVID-19 special exceptions, those are all laid out facts that have been sent out by Terry Schultz, who's the president of DVC. Let's see here.
Kathleen Renee, thought on Epcot opening with the other parks. I think it'll be all four at once. I don't think they'll just do one.
I
They
don't know.
might.
I don't know. There's so much. The reason I thought about that, and there's so much down right now at Epcot. It's so beat up. It wouldn't surprise me if they're in a situation where staff-wise they need to prioritize. Epcot's probably going to be the last that they prioritize if they have to. The only and the other issue too is
Because they're
World
going to get
Showcase.
everybody in one.
How much is World Showcase covered by the international group? Pretty heavily, right?
Yeah.
They said it's going to take them months, potentially months, to get them back due to travel restrictions.
That's true.
So it may be, and maybe Epcot opens and they open up Future World and they leave World Showcase closed until they can staff it. I don't know. I just, when I had projected back a couple months ago, I said if they're going to phase openings and they have to prioritize, Epcot's going to be the last one that they prioritize for, because they're not going to. Magic Kingdom's going to be the first. We know that. That's just kind of an obvious one.
That's
Hollywood Studios is going to be right there with it between everything they
definitely.
packed into there, and then Animal Kingdom is shoot, Animal Kingdom's operating on pretty normal capacity right now because they got to take care of all those animals either way. So a lot of that stuff will, yeah,
There's a new baby zebra I want to go see.
there is. So if they have to cut one park initially, I would think it would be Epcot. But again, that's just speculation. That's just I don't look at their budget. I don't know what their budgets look like. I don't know what the staffing situation looks like. But you got to think that it's got to be pretty hard to get a lot of those people back from all those various countries, other than
I do
maybe Canada
understand
and
that
Mexico.
all of the construction they're doing at Epcot and Magic painting the castle and everything for the anniversary, that they are like 3 or 4 months ahead of schedule because they've been able to work round the clock.
Well, I
Instead of
know. So
having to
they
stay out there.
shut down. They shut down a lot of the construction stuff, but some of it still went. It kind of depends
Yeah.
on who's running it. So hopefully they get up and running, and now that they can work, maybe they can use this next month or so before the park, 2 months before the park's open, they can get a lot done.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Will HHI and Vero open like we mentioned before? We'll see. I think they're on the same schedule as the rest of DVC resorts, unless they decide to accelerate them because they can. Um, Kate, will they stop letting people book rooms if there's a capacity issue at parks? So if I'm able to make a reservation, I'll be able to get into parks. Again, that's just a guess. I would think that they're going to prioritize their biggest customers, and their biggest customers, the most important group of people, are on-site guests. I mean, that's the way it is. There's a reason on-site guests get 60-day fast passes. There's a reason on-site guests get early magic hours, and I think they're going to follow that template. But how they limit rooms from there, who knows? I mean, do they start doing 25% rooms, 50%? I don't know. I think it depends on demand too.
Going back to Aulani, Seth is saying that Hawaii has a 14-day quarantine strictly enforced policy right now.
There you go. So I think that in this situation, I can't remember who it was that asked that question, but I wouldn't be trying to fly there in a month and a half, two
Yeah.
months. I just don't. It said, because I don't see DL being open. If you had 2 or 3 days at Disneyland, there's a huge chunk of the trip that's just went to waste. So I know it stinks, especially if you book Grand Californian, because I know that's hard.
Yeah.
Carolyn says we're confused about the additional extension points. Okay, so let me go back and recap. If you have an April or June use year, that's the only ones that it applies to right now. April or June use year, and you had a trip booked late in the use year that you had expiring points. If they were 2018 banked into 19, they're giving you 6 extra months. If they were 2019 and you just hadn't banked them yet, they're just letting you bank them past the deadline is essentially what happened. So understand that if you had 2018 points that you had banked from April of 2018 into April 2019, or June 2018 to June 2019, you don't have much time to use them. I mean, you got to use, like, April, they were expiring 3/31, so it means you need to use them by 9/31.
Right.
Not much time, and there's not much rooms left. So
Right.
Disney said that they're gonna manually make those adjustments the first week of June, around June 5th. The moment you see those points in your account, go book something quickly. Don't wait.
Kimberly Miller says,
Kimberly,
do you think they will make children wear masks? From what I have been told by 4 different cast members, the information they have been given as cast members will be required to wear masks. Guests will not be required, but it will be an option.
let's see what's interesting. Did you see that Bob Chapek was speaking on NBC today, and he had mentioned that guests will be wearing masks?
Yes.
So I think it's gonna be interesting to see. I really don't know. I think they're gonna have a hard time, but in the end, they're gonna make if they're only trying to get 30% capacity, I promise you, it's not that hard for them to get 30% people to wear a mask.
They still got people bringing in wagons and strollers, and even though that's against the rules.
That's true. That is very true.
How are you going to enforce that?
I don't know. We'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see that, and that's a tough one for me. Like, I was sitting there talking to Courtney before it was like, we're going in June. It's already going to be pretty warm, and then I'm like, I've got to keep a mask on my 5-year-old, and I mean, I might be able to. Braxton, maybe.
You get them cool
Hopefully, hopefully don't Brinley won't have to have one because I can promise you a 7-month-old is not going to wear a mask. So it'll be interesting. I think it's just a toss up. I think these are all guesses right now.
Well, the 7 month
Um,
old will come and stay with Aunt B, and we won't have to worry about it.
there you
Don't
go.
tell it.
There you go. Carolyn again. So since we had a reservation at the end of April, which we canceled prior to 31 days cancellation policy, do we fall into the extension? Yeah. So they'll extend them still, whether you canceled at 31 days or less. It doesn't matter. If you had a reservation that was impacted by the closure with an April or June use year, that was using bank points, they will take care of you. You need to call them up and make sure they get it because there's going to be people that slip through the cracks if you don't call and check on it. But you need to call and just talk to them, see what they can do in terms of getting you that extension, getting you in the queue to get that done, so you can book something in early June once those points are available. Trish, if I cancel a July trip myself without calling member services, will my borrowed points go back to the use year they were borrowed from? Yes, they
Yes.
will. I've asked them, and that applies to any trip going forward right now. If you make a cancellation, whether that be tomorrow or 11 months from now, they will move those points back. Now, it takes about 15 days. They said it can take a couple weeks for them to do it because it's a manual process. It doesn't automatically happen. The system's not set up to automatically kick them back. But they will do it. If you don't see it in a couple weeks, call them up and see what's going on. But unborrowing is a blanket free. That's a rule applying to anybody who cancels, no matter how it happens. Oh, let's see here. Oh, Amy was replying to our stuff we were talking about. That's GC booking that and losing it. I'm sorry for you.
That's a heartbreaker.
How will you eat with a mask? Came asks. So I've read that masks are not required while you're eating, because they expect that the restaurants will have already applied necessary social distancing requirements, so you don't have to wear a mask while you eat. Or you could just shove and drink a straw.
Exactly. Go
I'm
find a
trying to.
corner, sit down, take it off, and hide under a bush.
I was we're hanging with some friends today, and were there ones that went with food and wine. We were talking about that. I was like, how would you go to food and wine with a mask on? I said, I'm gonna invent some contraption that has a straw with one way, and then like that I'll figure it out because
Well, do
I'm
you
not
have to
gonna.
eat, or can you just drink? No, anyway. As we're going to wrap this up, we thank you so much for being with us. We're going to try to put another one of these events together in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Joe?
Yep. We're gonna figure out the next topic. Do me a favor, everyone that's been watching. Keep commenting on the Facebook stream. As this and add some questions, some topics that you'd like us to cover. This was a hot
Mark's
one that
out
we
there
wanted.
answering questions too. Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Part of
Um,
it too, just
but give us some topics that you want to cover. This was one that was hot instant right now because it needed to be covered in this very moment. But we're going to try to start making these a little more common, and just try to help people out in more of a interactive setting versus just commenting and posting and commenting and posting. So use your discount code. Go get some, buy some points from B, or book a rental or something, or get with them and mention that you saw the video if you want to rent your points out. And just mention, at least just mention that you saw the video and you learned about it that way. They will
you
take
guys have
very
any
good
other
care of you.
questions? Let us know. I mean, Joe and I are always around. Mark Burdick's with us. He's always around. Seth's around. I mean, there's plenty of us. If you've got questions, post them in this group. We'll answer them.
Perfect. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed. Look forward to hearing and seeing the next people with the next topics. B, it was good to see you again.
Bye.
We'll
Come
see
see me.
y'all.
Come bring my baby.
I will. We will. Hopefully, the 24 days.
Yes.
We'll
Bye,
see y'all. Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.